Okay, good afternoon. We will now call the meeting to order. I'm Derek Lambeth, the Earthquake Early Warning Program Manager at Cal OES, and will serve as the executive officer for today's meeting. We are appreciative of everyone who joined us today in person. We know everyone is busy and that your time is invaluable. We greatly appreciate your commitment to bring earthquake early warning to Californians across the state. As a reminder, this meeting will be recorded. For a safety check, please find the exits at the back of the room on both sides under each green exit sign. Restrooms can be found through the door on my right-hand side. Please walk down the hall. For anyone approaching the podium, the microphone is already on. Please stay at the podium so that those joining virtually can hear you. For those here in person, please press the button on the microphone in front of you. When the green light is on, your mic is live. Please make sure you speak clearly directly into the microphone again so those joining us virtually can hear you. This will also help for recording purposes. As for process, please note there will be an opportunity for board member discussion after each agenda item, starting with recent events. Additionally, there will be an opportunity for public comment after each agenda item. If you wish to make a statement, please let us know. You can raise your hand or speak into your microphone. For virtual public comment, all comments and questions will be collected and addressed during the public comment period. All right, we will now call roll. When called, please take a second to introduce yourself as the individual or as the designee. Secretary of Business, Consumer Services and Housing. Secretary of California Natural Resources Agency.
Brian Cash here for Wade Crowfoot.
Secretary of California Health and Human Services. Speaker of the Assembly appointee representing the interests of private businesses. Senate Committee on Rules appointee representing county governments. Governor's appointee representing the utilities industry.
Here, good afternoon.
Secretary of Transportation.
Giles Giovinazzi representing Secretary Tokes Umashakin.
Chancellor of the California State University. President of the University of California. We have a quorum. Thank you. Director Thomas Jacobs is joining us virtually this afternoon. Director, if you're ready, would you like to provide any opening remarks?
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate it. So good afternoon, everyone. Apologies that I can't be there with you today in person. Had some conflicts, but really appreciate getting the chance to welcome you guys, those of you that are in person at the NPR, and introduce myself. So I'm the new director of Cal OES, appointed just about a couple months ago now. And, really excited to be able to be back here at Cal OES. Just to offer a little bit about my background so you know where I'm coming from. Started in the private sector down in Silicon Valley, first in the beginning part of my career, but ultimately knew I wanted to work in the public sector, serving my community. So transitioned into emergency management at the local level, and then ultimately worked my way up to working at Cal OES through the State Threat Assessment Center, working with law enforcement, working with the fire service, and was here in the 2017 to 2014 to 2019 during the statewide fires of 2017, the Camp Fire, the Ridgecrest earthquake, and was overseeing response at headquarters, the State Operations Center, the State Warning Center during that time. Then I was asked by the governor to stand up a new department for the state called Energy Infrastructure Safety, which was created in statute after the utility-caused wildfires of 2017 and 2018. So I stood up that department for the last 6 years. And then with Director Ward's retirement, the governor asked me to come back to Cal OES and lead Cal OES. So I'm really excited to be here and be back at Cal OES. It feels like home for me. So I understand that since your last meeting, there was one big earthquake over in Russia that set off tsunami warnings. So I know we're going to hear a little bit about that today in this meeting. I'm not going to be able to stick around for the full meeting. Unfortunately, I do have a direct conflict, but looking forward to being able to see the briefing materials from the meeting. I know you're also going to talk about the MyShake integration into Chrome and Edge, and Brian, really appreciate what Natural Resources is doing to get that up on the browsers across that your agency. And I know we're really trying to push forward to move it across other agencies within the state family. So really appreciate the support from the other agencies getting that done. And then I know there's a panel discussion from the SIS or CISN network. So really looking forward to learning more about that. I know also, I have to say, I was really excited to get a briefing from my team on earthquake early warning when I first came on, because right as I was leaving in 2019 was when the initial funding for this was getting allocated, and it was the very beginning stage of getting this up and running. And it's really exciting to see how far all of you have taken this over the last 6 years. Now with over 1,000 sensors that are 90, looks like 96% complete in terms of getting up and running. And I know that our partners at Caltech and UC Berkeley and the Geological Survey, the USGS, all of our partners across the state family really appreciate all the work you guys have done, and it's very impressive. Looking forward to supporting you guys, continuing to do more great work and really pushing out the full benefit of earthquake early warning. And I hope you guys have a great meeting.
Thank you, Director. At this time, Chief Deputy Director Bastek, would you like to provide any opening remarks?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here, and thank you all for being here as well. Just want to introduce myself. Again, I'm Ian Bassick. I'm the Acting Chief Deputy Director for Operations here at Cal OES. Started with Cal OES back in August of 2024 when I was appointed as the Deputy Director for Response. And I came here to this organization after 27 years with the U.S. Coast Guard, including my last assignment as the commanding officer of the Coast Guard Air Station right here in Sacramento. But then around the new year, I was appointed or asked to serve in the acting role as the Chief Deputy Director for Operations when our former director retired, and been in this role ever since. But I'm excited to be here and excited to learn more about earthquake early warning and what this, all the support that this board provides. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Deputy Director Bastek. At this time, would any other advisory board members like to make any opening remarks? Okay, we'll move to review and approve the meeting minutes. In the packet received in your email and in the folder in front of you, there's a copy of the meeting minutes from the last meeting, which was held on June 25th, 2025. We will need to approve the meeting minutes from the last meeting, as today we have a quorum. So please take a few minutes to review. At this time, we also will open it up for any public comment. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes in length per person. If you're joining us online, please leave us a comment in the Q&A section. Circling back to the board, are there any, Chief Deputy Director Bastek, are there any proposed changes for the minutes?
No, thank you.
And for the board, any proposed changes to the meeting minutes?
None. I move approval.
Second.
All right. And just before any comments, okay. All right. All those, so we have a first, I heard a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. The ayes have it. Motion passes. The previous meeting minutes are approved. With that, we'll transition over to recent events. We'll now hear from Todd Becker, the Tsunami Program Specialist, who will provide us with an overview of the July 2025 magnitude 8.8 Kamchatka event off the Russian peninsula. All
right, we're working. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, as Derek said, my name is Todd Becker. I'm with the Seismic Hazards Branch Tsunami Program. Appreciate Earthquake Early Warning having me here today to talk about the Kamchatka event and all of your time. And to the next slide. Why are we talking about the Kamchatka event? So it was the 6th largest earthquake ever recorded in the modern instrumental time. So it was a big one. It got our attention and it activated response activities that day. And this event occurred this last July, on July 29th, 2025. So first I wanted to start talking a little bit about tsunami alerts that we've had in the last 16 years in California that have prompted tsunami response. So this slide shows you the events we've had in about the last 16 years. All of these occurred from large earthquakes, generally across the Pacific Basin, with the exception of the Tonga volcanic eruption in 2022. The Kamchatka magnitude 8.8 earthquake was the largest earthquake and tsunamigenic event since the magnitude 9 earthquake in Tohoku in 2011. Both those earthquakes produced a tsunami that put parts of California into both a tsunami advisory and a tsunami warning alerts. One difference between the 2011 Japan Tohoku earthquake and tsunami and the 2025 Kamchatka earthquake and tsunami was that tsunami warnings issued via tsunami wireless alerts were not yet in place. I'm going to touch a little bit more about those wireless alerts and some recent updates that we've had from that through the Tsunami Warning Center. So getting to the event on July 29th, a little recap. That day at about 4:30 p.m. Pacific time, National Tsunami Warning Center issued Tsunami Bulletin number 1 due to a preliminary magnitude 8.0 earthquake off the coast of Kamchatka, Russia. Kind of germane to this group was during that time when that magnitude 8 first came up on the CISN and the National Tsunami Warning Center, it issued bulletin number 1. I was duty officer that day and I was tracking a magnitude 5.3 earthquake that had just occurred off the coast, issued a shake alert. I was looking for some my shake numbers, potentially preparing a report that I was going to push out to leadership here when the screen starts flashing that magnitude 8. And I mean, that got all of our attention at that point. But that first bulletin put us into just noted that that magnitude 8 had occurred. They were evaluating, and California was under evaluation, but it definitely got our attention. We were looking at some of the feeds from the National Tsunami Warning Center. We were on the phone with them, and they were indicating that this event definitely was probably going to ramp up as the magnitude got evaluated and then went up. So about an hour later, we went into a tsunami watch alert level for California. About an hour after that, so 2 hours after the earthquake, all parts of California went into a tsunami advisory alert level. And about 2 hours after that, parts of California went into a tsunami warning alert. And that was from Cape Mendocino at the Humboldt County Mendocino border to the California-Oregon border. And so part of what caused those alerts to get elevated throughout the event was that it first came in as a magnitude 8 when the National Tsunami Warning Center, they usually try to push out that first alert within that first 5 minutes, but that earthquake is still rupturing, so they're evaluating. And then that went up to the 8.7, which is what put us into the tsunami watch. And then additional evaluation, eventually that magnitude was revised to an 8.8. And just as a little review, if you're not familiar, the tsunami alert levels of watch means that, you know, a large earthquake, potentially tsunamigenic event has occurred. The National Tsunami Warning Center is still evaluating, but it's that time when we get that we're going to start taking actions, start spinning up response activities and getting everybody going. When we go into an advisory, that's when they've done their modeling and have some data to estimate that tsunami wave heights are bound to be between 1 to 3 feet. And a tsunami warning is when tsunami waves are anticipated to be greater than 3 feet. All right, and this slide is just showing a bit of the timeline, the tsunami travel timeline for that tsunami that day. And as you'll see there, what I was just talking, it took us about an hour, that hour point to get into that first tsunami watch, 2 hours to get into that tsunami advisory, and then by 4 hours, we were into that tsunami warning. And that night, we were expecting tsunami waves the first waves to impact Del Norte County a little bit before midnight. And then by about 1:15, a little after 1 a.m. that night, or early that next morning in San Diego. So by the time California went into a warning advisory or warning alert level, the wave was already about halfway across the Pacific towards us, but we were well into our response activities, both here at Cal OES and with our coastal partners at that time. So now quickly, I just want to give a few examples of the bulletins that came in. This was bulletin 1. I don't know if it's hard to see that, but this was the first bulletin that came in from the National Tsunami Warning Center at 4:35. So just 5 minutes after that earthquake, when they do their first evaluation. And some of the things we're looking for what's that information for California. And there I have circled in the red. It was showing they know there was a big earthquake, but they're still evaluating what the potential threat for California is. But it's at that point that we're getting ready. We're waiting for that next bulletin to see what our next actions are going to be. And then bulletin 2 came in. Like I said, that was about an hour later. And that's when we went into the tsunami watch. And at this point, we're getting some tsunami arrival time estimations for California. But it was at that watch point when I was on the phone with our duty manager that day, that happened to be Derek, telling him that, right, we've talked to the National Tsunami Warning Center, we've talked to our partners with California Geological Survey, and this is the real deal. We need to start spinning up our activities. We need to get our coastal partners spun up because we're going to have some response activities and potentially, damaging waves due to this earthquake. And then bulletin 3 came out later that evening, about 2 hours after the earthquake. And that's when all parts of California went into a tsunami advisory. And so, as I mentioned earlier with the tsunami advisory, that's when we were expecting, tsunami wave heights, somewhere greater than 1 foot and up to 3 foot for many parts of California, which, could be damaging and hazardous to people and property. And then later that evening, we went into tsunami bulletin number 5, and that's when parts of California went into a tsunami warning. And that's the tsunami warning was from the coast of Cape Mendocino, so the Mendocino Humboldt County border north to the Oregon border. So essentially, Humboldt County and Del Norte County. One thing of note with the tsunami warnings is that issues a tsunami wireless alert that's triggered by the National Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska. And that goes out to all phones within a county. So any of those coastal locations that are going to be within that tsunami warning due to some limitations with their system, that tsunami wireless alert goes out through all those counties. And so it gets a lot of attention. There were some previous issues with some of the warning in those wireless emergency alerts. And that's something I'll wrap up today with, touching on some changes that have occurred to those wireless emergency alerts since this event. And then also the December 5th, 2024 tsunami warning due to the magnitude 7.1 that occurred off the coast of California. All right. And then later that night, it took us about, to bulletin 14 and number 35 to where the tsunami alert cancellations started to come in for California. The cancellations first started coming in about 5 a.m. on July 30th, so that next day, and ran all the way through to about 7 a.m. on July 31st. One thing of note with the tsunami alert levels, a cancellation does not mean the all clear. That just means that tsunami wave levels are now below that minimum threshold of 1 foot that the National Tsunami Warning Center is monitoring, and that the all clear is assessed and communicated at the local level. So that's something, as the state, we have our state coordination calls with our locals. We're making sure to communicate that they know that before people can return to evacuated areas or before waterways are deemed safe, there needs to be boots on the ground and people assessing that situation. All right, so a little bit about the tsunami response, just to tie this all together. The numbers for that day, there were 39 hours of response activities. There were 35 National Tsunami Warning Center bulletins that were sent out about every hour from the National Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska. There were 23 National Tsunami Warning Center conference calls that happened about every hour during that event time. Once they got started, we had 20 California state coordination calls that typically follow a half hour after those National Tsunami Warning Center calls. And the big underlying thing that I've got in bold and underlined here, there were no casualties in California. And it's one of those things I want to keep highlighting. We take it as a win due to a lot of the efforts here at Cal ES at the federal level with all of our various state, local, tribal partners at all the work. There were hazardous conditions that existed that day. And due to the alerting, the education, and the response activities, people were kept out of harm's way. Unfortunately, we had no casualties. So we don't have to hear me talk anymore. I've got a couple of videos just to show some of the videos that were captured from the tsunami event. So on the right-hand side, you'll see this video was captured right near the earthquake epicenter in Kamchatka. Eventually we'll see, I know for some of you dog lovers out there, Megan, there's going to be a cute dog coming up. He got pretty close to that wave, but as you can see, that run up came really significantly high. I forget, they were saying, I mean, that's 60-foot vertical splash. So that that person was over 60 feet up that hill slope there when those waves were coming in. And another local video, this just shows an area that was inundated near the earthquake epicenter in Kamchatka. I think this video kind of does a good demonstration of how after those tsunami waves have come in, and that it is a surge. It's not your lapping wind waves. There's a lot of area that's inundated, and then you'll see that those tsunami waves are continuing just to push in. That whole ocean level has changed, and that water is just surging in, and it's definitely more of like a flooding of land as opposed to a typical wind wave. And then bringing it back to something more local, this is Crescent City up in Del Norte County. Crescent City, as many of you may know, tends to be, sometimes it's been termed the tsunami magnet due to the bathymetry and just its, orientation with the coast. It tends to be our most impacted spot in California and has been historically through time. This wave you'll see in this video, I think there's some sparking that shows up in the background, and I've got a still image of that dock that was damaged during that. One of the successes, I guess, with this tsunami and that damage was that during the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, this harbor was significantly damaged. There was a lot of mitigation work that was done. And some of the work that was done to the dock that got damaged during this tsunami, and I'll bring that one up. This guy here, it was constructed to take a lot of the brunt of those tsunami forces and the wave or the tsunami wave velocity coming into the harbor that day. So there still was damage to that dock, but it was kind of the sacrificial dock that allowed the other docks to remain undamaged. And again, just another video of some of the really extreme currents coming into the Crescent City Harbor that day. And with that, this slide's probably hard to read for some of you, but this just shows for that tsunami event, some of the largest observations for the tsunami waves were in California for this event. Crescent City Harbor at that 1.18 meters, so just around 4 feet. There was a couple other locations that were also high in California. And so it definitely was a significant event. And like I said, some of, what went well. Again, no casualties. We really want to, underscore that. We say exercise, exercise, exercise. Just yesterday, we were exercising with the National Tsunami Warning Center, our seismic hazards branch, our California Geological Survey partners, and other folks at Cal OES and throughout the Pacific Basin to practice for these tsunami events so that we're ready when they happen. Our coordination calls went well at the local level. Again, the education, the training, the exercises with our locals, what they do at the local level, evacuations and waterfront closures went well and got people out of harm's way, which led to those no casualties. Some things we learned to test systems. There were some systems that day that didn't work as expected. We were able to pivot and still get beyond, but now we put some things into place to make sure that we test those more often, because fortunately the tsunami events do tend to be far and few between, and we hope they stay that way. And so the last slide I wanted to wrap up with was the tsunami wireless emergency alert updates. I mentioned that when a tsunami warning is issued for a coastal location, the entire coastal county adjacent to that will get the wireless emergency alert. Something we found during the Kamchatka event and then also the Cape Mendocino event from 2024 was that the tsunami wireless emergency alert language had some wording in it that caused concern for people well outside of the tsunami hazard zone. So both, in California and many of our partners through the National Tsunami Hazard Mitigation Program, which includes all the states and territories and science partners from areas with tsunami hazard, have worked with the National Weather Service and NOAA to update that tsunami wireless emergency alert language. And so just in March 2026, they were able to update that language. So now if a tsunami wireless alert goes out, it's a little bit more direct for those people that are in the tsunami hazard zone versus the people that are outside the tsunami hazard zone. And we continue to work with them so that there will be a point in time that the technology will allow them and the system to alert just those that are in the zone. But we consider this a win, and it was a good partnership and something that came out of these events that, like most of these events, we assess what went well and what didn't and what we can fix before the next one. And so with that, I will wrap up my overview of the Kamchatka tsunami. And I think we've got some time for questions.
Thank you, Todd. Chief Deputy Director, would you like to provide any comments?
Yeah, thank you. Great presentation, Todd. Appreciate that. And thank you for your team's work that you put in on updating those alerting language. I know that's really big for our local communities up in California. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
And do any board members wish to provide a comment or ask a question?
Thanks, Derek. Great presentation. Great to see the progress. Two questions. One is just noticing that when the earthquake emanates, by and large from a foreign country, do you get the data? Do you sense it independently as either California or the United States government, or do you rely on getting the data from a foreign country?
So that's a good question. I'm not sure, and I may lean on if there's some people in here that are a little more experienced with that. It does come through our California Integrated Seismic Network, and the National Tsunami Warning Center is analyzing that data. And so we're getting it directly through that. But as far as, I guess, sensor networks in those foreign countries, I'm not super familiar with how that works. But.
Okay, so by and large, we're sensing it with American, if you will, instrumentation, not.
Do we have CGS or USGS? Because we get our information, we meaning California, we're getting our information from USGS. The question is, where are they getting it from?
If any of our CISM partners wish to comment, that podium is hot. Thank you.
Not that I don't trust the Russians, but
Hi, I'm Alan Husker from Caltech. The answer is both. We sense it on all of our networks here in California, but the wave does take some time to arrive here, the seismic wave. The fastest way is actually with our yes, other countries is where you get the data, and there's worldwide global networks that are constantly sharing data. And the USGS actually is measuring our earthquakes all around the world all the time. And so that's where the initial data actually comes from. If we waited for the seismic wave to come all the way here before there was a tsunami warning issued, it would take longer. And so you get to the closer countries. So countries like Japan, Korea, Russia too probably share some, but really Japan and Korea would be the ones that I think are sharing more data in that region than the Russian ones.
I had one more, if you will. So for the one last summer, it looked like the predictions for the wave height hitting the west coast of the U.S. were more or less accurate from the earliest forecasts that were put out, and then what we actually measured here. Is that generally true, that we were kind of in the ballpark with like a several hours in advance forecast of wave height on the west coast? It was, within 10, 15% or so, give or take.
Yeah, the estimates in their modeling is pretty good, and I think once they have that, that rupture model, what that rupture was, and the first data that's hitting those dart buoys, those deep ocean buoys, their modeling is pretty accurate. Yeah, and it was pretty spot on to what we ended up with in the end. And also one of the things we get in those alerts, duration. We were just talking about this yesterday, and that's one of the things kind of, post-op I was looking at was the duration. And early on in that, it estimated Crescent City was going to have a 36-hour duration for that. I mean, and it was almost to the minute that, we had 36 hours that those waves were bouncing around in Crescent City, whereas other parts, it was 10 to 12 hours. So their modeling, was pretty spot on for this event.
And one of the reasons why I was inspired to ask that question is that the event in December of 2024, which was off Mendocino or Fort Bragg or somewhere, I think that one, if I remember correctly, may have been underwhelming when it finally hit in terms of, I mean, there were some pretty dramatic wave heights early on, and we all scrambled, especially those in the Bay Area. And then, we saw like a couple inches of wave height hit the Golden Gate or something.
Yeah, so the local and regional source events are, I don't know, they're kind of our Achilles heel, both from a time for response and also their time for evaluation. And some of that, like that Hawaii National Tsunami Warning Center put us into tsunami warning alerts from the Oregon border to the San Francisco Bay Area, is just a matter of protocol. And it's because that earthquake was over a certain threshold that they are not going to be able to get enough data or get any data before those tsunami waves are impacting the shores. So they just have to push out those alerts. And recently I was just looking at there was a earthquake in about a similar magnitude off the coast of Indonesia, that there was about a 2-foot wave that, hit the local shores there. And it was kind of, a little bit reinforced why the National Tsunami Warning Center does what they do in those events. But unfortunately, some of those, in those circumstances, it is kind of on the over alerting, but it's where we need to lean on the side of caution for those events, because it's that 1 out of 10 times that we're going to get that underwater landslide or some event that's going to cause a damaging tsunami that they have to push out those alerts. And that's something post those events, we've worked a lot with the local communities to have follow-on messaging for that, because that's something else we have to balance after events like that, is the public perception and just communicating what the hazard is and why the alerts went out as they did.
Yes, Board Member Cash.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I know we have sensors all throughout California for earthquakes. You mentioned there were deep ocean buoys. I was trying to figure out how you calculate what the size of the waves are going to be that hit California. It sounds like we were extremely accurate, so bravo on that. But just trying to figure out how we actually do that. Do we have?
Right. And this is where I wish I had Jay in the room. Jay, Jay, our California Geological Survey partners, and Jay can give you a great overview of that, but I can give you a simplified one. So the National Tsunami Warning Center, they're the ones that are monitoring for this. They're operating, 24/7, 365, looking at those waveforms coming in from the different networks and monitoring that buoy network. They also have, I think, 2 different modeling systems that when they've detected an earthquake and then they're waiting for some of these data to hit these buoys, based on the data that comes into those buoys, based on this pre-computed data, they run those through the system. They get these 2 different model results. I think there's a averaging or, mean between the 2 models, and then that's what they push out. But those models are based on, a lot of, right, just I think, both theoretical and, observations from, historic events and, recent events, so that they can kind of, get a pretty close approximation, and they're constantly refining all of that.
And board member Cash, that falls squarely in our CGS partners realm. And what we can do is follow up with you with an even more accurate definition. And thank you, Todd, for taking that on.
All right.
Any other questions or comments from the board? And now we'll turn to, we'll now turn to Philip Labra, the Earthquake Early Warning System Operations Manager, to provide an update on recent seismic events and program updates. But before Phil begins, we'd like to acknowledge, for recording purposes, voting member Julie Soulier, designee on behalf of California Health and Human Services, joined the meeting at 1:24 p.m. Thank you and welcome.
Okay, thank you, Derek, and good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to highlight recent earthquake activity around the state that has garnered significant media attention since our last meeting. In response to the seismic activity in Indio, San Ramon, and Boulder Creek, our program, in coordination with the Cal OES Crisis Communications Team, have implemented targeted messaging to the affected areas through rapid response efforts. Once an earthquake occurs, the Earthquake Early Warning Program identifies a targeted area to send ready-to-go preparedness messaging for the impacted communities. This is typically done through media inquiries, interviews, calls, and social media. In addition, public safety messaging is displayed on Cal OES's various platforms, including caloes.ca.gov, earthquake.ca.gov, and social media accounts. This strategy helps to get messaging out quickly to those affected areas and brings awareness to those outside of the directly impacted areas to take proactive steps to be prepared in the event of an emergency in their areas, such as aftershocks. What you see here, California has experienced several earthquakes since the start of the year. A magnitude 4.9 earthquake struck near Indio, California on January 19th and was part of a notable sequence in the Coachella Valley. The epicenter was approximately 12 miles from Indio in the hills near the southern San Andreas Fault, and shaking was felt throughout the greater Los Angeles area and as far down as San Diego, according to about 8,200 USGS felt reports. This event was the main shock of a very active sequence. I think over 800 events were recorded in the following weeks, and the activity occurred in a complex region where the San Andreas and the San Jacinto fault systems interact, known for seismic swarms. There were no reports of significant damage or impacts because the earthquake was estimated above that magnitude 4.5 threshold. An earthquake early warning alert was distributed for this event. As you can see, nearly 59,000 MyShake alerts were sent to devices in these areas, and Google delivered over 470,000 alerts sent to Android devices. After review, the system performed as designed and expected, providing several seconds of warning to residents. Over 86% of devices received alerts from MyShake, with some arriving 10 to 20 seconds before feeling shaking. I did want to highlight that the Shake Alert system issued the first alert in 6.5 seconds, and then the MyShake app took 0.3 seconds to deliver the alert to the first devices. This slide represents a daily overview of the MyShake downloads during the Indio event. We observed that downloads usually tend to surge up following an event and can stay elevated for several days afterwards. So in just 5 days, we saw that MyShake was downloaded over 18,000 times. Moving on to the next event, a few weeks later, a magnitude 4.2 earthquake occurred near San Ramon on February 2nd, an event that shook the San Francisco Bay Area. The activity was located within the Calaveras fault system, and that magnitude 4.2 was part of an earthquake swarm, a sequence of quakes without a signal clear main shock. On February 2nd alone, dozens of tremors were recorded that day. Shaking again was felt widely across the Bay Area, with over 5,000 felt reports submitted to USGS. Reports came in from as far north as Santa Rosa and as far south as Santa Cruz. Again, no major structural damage or injuries were reported, and local impacts were limited to items falling off shelves in the San Ramon and Dublin areas. Because the earthquake magnitude was below the magnitude 4.5 alerting threshold, no EEW alerts were sent out via MyShake or on Android devices. And then, as you can see, over the span of 5 days, MyShake had recorded more than, or we saw more than 10,000 downloads for MyShake. On April 2nd, a magnitude 4.6 earthquake struck just 2 kilometers southeast of Boulder Creek, California. That's located north of Santa Cruz. This seismic event took place within the Santa Cruz Mountains, which is part of the San Andreas fault system. The USGS recorded a peak shaking intensity of an MMI 6, which is strong shaking, near the epicenter. Over 33,000 felt reports were recorded by USGS, indicating that shaking was felt as far north as Petaluma and then as far south as King City. For this event, over 400,000 MyShake alerts were sent to devices, and Google delivered over 1.2 million alerts to Android devices. Because the initial automated estimate was above a magnitude 5, a shake alert was issued within 4.9 seconds. MyShake then took 2.1 seconds to send alerts to the first devices, and over 92% of these devices that received alerts just a few seconds before people began to feel the shaking. Again, we do have a table with the MyShake downloads for the Boulder Creek event. In over 5 days, MyShake was downloaded over 23,000 times. Again, these events served as a real-time assessment of the system. In addition, our rapid response efforts also provided an opportunity to remind residents and visitors that we do live in earthquake country, underscoring the need for everyone to stay prepared. Now, one of the key outcomes from these events has been the increase in public engagement and awareness surrounding earthquake preparedness, especially through tools like the MyShake app. Since its launch in 2019, the MyShake app has nearly 4.5 million downloads and has sent more than 6.1 million EEW alerts. Recently, the Berkeley Seismological Lab, with support from Cal OES, has broadened the reach of MyShake beyond mobile devices by introducing a browser extension. This functions on laptops via Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge. This enhancement offers users another way to receive earthquake early warning alerts on devices that they manage. With this new feature in place, we begin to expand and implement the browser extension across various state agencies. To facilitate this rollout, Cal OES has created a comprehensive deployment toolkit that includes staff messaging, IT setup instructions, FAQs, feedback mechanisms, and guidance for using Google Chrome extensions. So far, thanks to CGS in the building, Cal OES and CGS have adopted the toolkit approach and rolled out the browser extension across both agencies. The initial feedback from CGS has been positive. Now, the next step involves sharing the toolkit with additional partner agencies across state government for their IT review, and as well as potential deployment and implementation. So if you are interested in participating in this new capability, please reach out to our program at earthquakeinfo@caloes.ca.gov. I think that's it. Back to you, Dirk.
Thank you for those updates, Philip. Chief Deputy Director, would you like to provide any comments?
Thank you for the presentation, Philip. No comment.
Any board members that would like to provide comments or questions at this time? All right, hearing none, opening it up to the public. Seeing there are no comments there, we'll now move into the education and outreach portion of our meeting. John Goodell, Education Outreach Lead Coordinator, will provide an update on the 2025 Great California Shakeout Tour and additional outreach events the EEW team has participated in recently.
All right, thank you, Derek. I am John Goodell, and I work alongside Julie Leo in our education outreach program. We've had a busy year promoting earthquake early warning, including media campaigns and outreach events. So most notably is our annual Great California Shakeout Tour. We travel up and down the state in advance of the shakeout drill with the primary focus of promoting earthquake preparedness, the MyShake app, and ensuring that everyone is prepared for the next big earthquake. Each tour stop includes an earthquake simulator, an outreach booth, and a strong media presence. As you can see, that was our tour from last year. We traveled to 4 different cities, including all new sites to us. The tour began in the Sacramento region at UC Davis, followed by the San Francisco Zoo, and then our first ever stop in Orange County at the Cal State Fullerton campus. Concluded in San Diego at the Waterfront Park. Generally, we prefer to end the tour in San Diego, and that's due to other high-profile shakeout events already scheduled in Los Angeles and in the Bay Area on that Thursday, the day of the shakeout drill. So what you see here is a snapshot of last year's tour, some of the metrics. So what stands out the most is we had more than 200 simulator experiences, which means the number of people that rode the simulator. We did nearly 35 media interviews, including live and recorded TV, radio, and newspaper in both English and in Spanish. During the tour, we had an increase of more than 34,000 downloads of the MyShake app, so roughly about 8,000 new downloads per day of the tour. What you don't see here is we also had 12 seismic hazards branch staff in 4 areas across California. We had more than 10.4 million people register for the shakeout drill in California alone. We had an influencer campaign that went on the morning of the shakeout drill. And then this was an all hands-on tour. Our seismic hazards branch was obviously involved along with our public information team and our PR contractor. We all worked in unison to put on this event. In addition to the shakeout tour, Cal OES also jointly coordinates and participates in 2 events on Shakeout Day, one in Southern California, one in Northern California. At the City of Los Angeles Emergency Operations Center, Earthquake Country Alliance and the City of Los Angeles hosted a press conference that was covered by Los Angeles Area Media. Cal OES had Ian Bastek and Nate Ortiz attend that event. In the City of Oakland's Frank Ogawa Plaza, there was significant media presence with a press event, including the mayor's office and Oakland's fire chief. Additionally, live trainings took place, including evacuations, large-scale shelters, and using fire extinguishers to put out active fires. Cal OES was represented by Yvonne Durantes. At both locations, Cal OES hosted outreach booths, providing critical earthquake preparedness information, including how to secure your space, prepare a go bag, shelter-in-place kit, and protective measures during an earthquake. And as we look ahead to this year, we are already considering cities and sites and discussing logistics, including the 3 major media markets, Bay Area, Los Angeles, and San Diego, plus Sacramento, maybe more cities this year. Thinking of creative ways to use influencers and start the social media campaign earlier. Possibly adding a shakeout earthquake evacuation drill here at headquarters. As always, the central focus on our efforts is expanding our educational outreach messaging via media outlets and in-person community engagement as far and wide as possible. Regardless of the media market, audience, or location, the following message is always consistent. We focus on drop, lock, cover, and hold on, securing your space, increasing MyShake downloads, turning on phone notifications, and preparing an emergency preparedness kit and go bag. And last slide here. So lastly, while the Shakeout Tour is our flagship event, we also attended and collaborated on other prestigious events, outreach events throughout the year. Most recently, we attended events in the Bay Area at Meta headquarters, which is home to Facebook and Instagram, as well as events in Anaheim and Santa Rosa. For Meta, we had the earthquake simulator and outreach booth. A local CERT team also participated. The event was designed for Meta employees only. In Anaheim, we were at the Disney's Grand Californian Hotel with an outreach booth shared with the Seismic Safety Commission. And that was attended by partners within the infrastructure and building sectors. And in Santa Rosa, which was just a couple of weeks ago, we had the earthquake simulator and outreach booth. This was in recognition of April as Earthquake Preparedness Month. The event was the Wildfire and Earthquake Expo at the Sonoma County Fairgrounds, and it was open to the public, which had an estimated attendance of 3,000 people. And in the coming months, we'll be attending Fleet Weeks throughout the state, more outreach events, and of course, our annual Shakeout Tour again in October. That's it for education outreach. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Chief Deputy Director, would you like to provide any comments?
Thank you, John. Appreciate you and all the team's work on those outreach events.
Any board members would like to provide any comments or questions? Board Member Briggs.
Just curious how the conversation went with Instagram and Facebook. Were they interested in doing it, or
The integration of earthquake early warning.
into social media?
Unfortunately, I was not part of that conversations, but I'll turn it over to my
Well,
colleagues.
John is tracking that. That is to be continued. Obviously, we have visions of grandeur. We'd love to see EEW incorporated with streaming and social media services. So we'll continue to fight that fight.
There's a certain demographic you'll hit immediately if you.
Absolutely. Yes. Board Member Cash.
Yeah, did you say that 10 million people signed up for the shakeout?
Shakeout drill. Yeah,
Shakeout.
10.4 million in California alone.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's
it's grown to be a worldwide drill.
That's amazing. That's a quarter of the population of the state. Yeah. Well done.
And California generally makes up the vast majority of the worldwide signups for the drill.
All right, and checking to see if we have any
I have a
public.
question. When they sign up, do they sign up through a portal? And is there a way to also have them remind them to download the app?
So you sign up for the Shakeout drill, you sign up on shakeout.org. I believe that's the only way to sign up for the drill
Okay.
itself.
And then
there-
on that page, when you sign up, is there remember to download the app as well?
There's
So
not.
it's not directly, but Earthquake Country Alliance is a partner of the program. And so you'll see them at events pushing the My Shake app just as much as Shakeout.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, checking again to see if there's any public comment. All right, with that, we'll now move into research and development portion of our meeting. Our R&D lead, Brandon Howland, will start with status updates on recent research and implementation projects we've previously presented to the board.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here on this day to talk about, all our projects that we're doing. And so I am Brandon Howland, the research and development lead. So I have the great job of kind of figuring out how we're going to spend our money. So it's quite fun for me and a great, obviously it's a group effort, but I get to pitch ideas and so forth. So today I'm talking about two different projects that are just now concluding and kind of another one starting up, and then we'll finish it up with a with a panel with some of our partners. And so last time we had the advisory board, we talked about our earthquake early warning airport feasibility study. That has wrapped up and is now live on our website, which you can go view, the public can view and read the entire document. Highly recommend. But then since then, in the success of that study, we are progressing towards a grant. So we see the success from the study, the importance of implementing at an airport. And so now we want to put some funding to start that. So as we're probably aware, airports play a role in disaster response and recovery. including emergency relief operations. Earthquakes pose a risk to airports, and based on advice from one of our advisory board members, Kelly has partnered with UC Berkeley to develop that EEW airport feasibility study that I mentioned. Our goal is to implement EEW into airports, and we use this study as a guide to showcase that importance to airports and their facilities, which is why we have a grant that is now live that is going to be providing $800,000 to EEW implementation at airports. To give a bit of context from the airport study, California airports have been greatly impacted by earthquakes in the past, meaning large earthquakes disrupted airport operations. In airports affected by earthquakes, you often see one or both types of damages that occur. You see structural and non-structural. Structural damage is what we typically think in terms of big earthquake damage, right? We think of the cracking in foundation, collapsed stairs, broken columns. But that's not typically what actually happens that happens, or if that does happen, we see non-structural causing the bulk of the damage or the bulk of the injuries. And so that non-structural damage, that's where we see windows shattering, we see ceiling fixtures falling, we see pipes bursting, furniture moving, lighting systems dislodging. And these non-structural damages can cause serious injuries to people. But most of this damage can be mitigated by drop, cover, and hold on, which is where EEW comes in. You also see liquefaction is a serious issue at airports during an earthquake, as it can cause significant damage to the facilities and stop operations. This can also compound the effects of the shaking on the system, like fuel pipelines. EEW has the potential to help reduce the level of fuel loss and help warn operators before shaking occurs, to give them time to take protective actions. Now, the researchers of the study performed a benefit cost analysis on many of the common EEW implementation automations that could be seen at an airport. You can see that depending on the size of the airport, as an example for our study, we have Palm Springs Airport and LAX. You can see that depending on the size of the airport, the location, and just their facilities, you see much different BCR, benefit cost ratio. Some of which seem as if, maybe it gives kind of an option for the airports. Do I want to pursue the one that provides the highest BCR, or see one that maybe it's not quite where you want it to be, but there are actually more benefits that can be implemented into this BCR than these researchers were able to actually implement. Those variables are really hard to measure, such as return to operations, which is a huge benefit of EEW, but not something that researchers were able to quantify in this study. So going to our grant. All right, so we saw the success from our study. We saw the importance of implementing. So now we have the grant moving $800,000 into funding EEW into airports. That grant is split amongst two recipients, and the grant is going to run from June 1st, 2026, so just coming up, to March 31st, 2028. So providing almost 2 years to implement EEW at the airports. The awarded grantees are Ontario International Airport, as well as John Wayne Airport. And the focus of their implementation is on PA announcements and visual paging systems being implemented with EEW. You see also they're looking at fire station bay door automation, visual paging systems, as well as SMS texting that can be alerting the staff. And so a big part of what they want to push is alerting their operations, because as I mentioned before, a big part of EEW is not only making sure people are safe, they can drop, cover, and hold on to protect themselves, but also how do we get back to operational status after shaking occurs. So that is our project that kind of concluded with the study, and now we're moving forward with the grant. And now we're going to move into fire stations. So this project just wrapped up. I'm very happy with how it happened and how it concluded. Sorry. So Cal OES worked closely with the Cal OES Fire and Rescue Branch and the Cal OES Grants Processing Team to ensure the success of this project. The fire departments were selected based on pre-identified methodology and criteria. This includes a fire station or multiple within communities with a CDC Social Vulnerability Index, or SVI, of 0.6 and above. They also have to house a Cal OES fire asset and being in a location with a history of catastrophic history of catastrophic seismic events. For the purpose of the grant, it was important for us when we were finding fire stations to fund that they have that SVI above 0.6 to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. The fire departments selected for the pilot project were Alameda County Fire, Los Angeles County Fire, Morongo Reservation Fire, Rio Dell Fire, and San Bernardino County Fire. Of the 5, only Los Angeles County Fire and Morongo Reservation actually executed the grant. The 3 others backed out of the funds. Now, the 2 grant recipients, LA County Fire as well as Morongo Reservation Fire, received up to $167,000 to cover the cost of outfitting the fire stations with EEW technology and equipment, as well as up to 5 years of operations and maintenance costs. There is no cost match for this grant, which is always a big selling point whenever we tell people about our grants. The grant timeline was June 1st, 2024 to March 31st, 2026. LA County implemented EEW at 5 of their stations, and Morongo Reservation implemented at their 1 fire station. We have a quick video. It's rapid succession here, but it's a teaser trailer for footage for our success story video, which should be out in the next few months. This shows a rapid response from firefighters as they respond to a call. EEW is designed to prepare them and assist them in responding to an earthquake by opening the bay doors upon detecting strong shaking in their area and providing an early warning of the shaking so they can take their own protective actions. This will help protect them from injury and help reduce any delay caused from the shaking. EEW protocols that were installed in fire stations may reduce property, quickly restore operations, and first responders, and as well as provide first responder safety. EEW technology could, for example, reduce the potential for hazmat and fire issues, as well as improve communications following an earthquake. Installed EEW technology can open bay doors, stop elevators, throttle gas valves, provide community tornado-style siren alerts, SMS text messaging, and more. These automations are now active in these fire stations of LA County and Morongo Reservation. And a nice side effect of this project, and just shows the collaboration of this together, is that there's a challenge with implementing EEW into fire station bay doors. Because if you think about, okay, well, shaking occurs, bay door opens, fire trucks are out, who's going to close the doors? Or say the fire trucks are already out on a call, shaking happens, doors open. Well, that's just leaving vulnerability to these fire stations, which if you're a firefighter, you don't really want. You don't want random people, patrolling your fire station while you're gone. Well, so through this project, Morongo Reservation and their electrician found a way to work around this. So they put a timer on it, so that way the doors are only open for two or so minutes, depending on what they wanted, which gives more than enough time, as you saw, just how quickly firefighters are able to get out. They tell me they can get out oftentimes in just mere seconds. So 2 minutes or so of the doors being open, it closing immediately afterwards. This not only allows for the opening of the bay doors so firefighters can get out, reducing delays, as well as preventing entrapment of the vehicles, which is a major issue and has been seen in a previous earthquake here in California. But then it provides the firefighters with that safety net, knowing that their fire station is still secure after the fact. And so Morongo and their electrician is able to find a workaround and then shared that with LA County. So LA County has now implemented that as well on their 5 fire stations with EEW. So I'd love to see that collaboration between groups. It's kind of an added benefit of our project.
All right. And thank you, Brandon. Also want to thank board member Giles Giovinazzi and Calsta, as well as Derek Cantor from Caltrans with the support and guidance through both of the airport projects that were executed. With that, Chief Deputy Director, would you like to provide any comments or questions?
Thank you, Brandon. No comments. Appreciate it.
I'll turn to the board to see if there are any comments or questions. Board Member Briggs.
Thanks, Brandon. This might be a bit unfair, but do you happen to know if airports are built or held to a different building code than, normal commercial, or, I know hospitals and nuclear reactors, but our airports, they have their own code. It's likely enhanced,
I don't know that. I would imagine there'd be something, but I'm going to turn to our advisory board member to see maybe if he knows.
We can look into it and
Yeah.
circle back. We'll make note of it.
And then just with respect to the fuel shut off at the airports, do you think that's going to gather some momentum? It seems like a low cost, high benefit item there.
Fuel shut. So sorry, to which one?
The fuel shut off at the airports.
Oh yeah, there's, as you saw from the numbers, it's a huge BCR, so great benefit and very little cost to that. Especially, part of the project, we were able to tour the fuel depot of LAX, and it's absolutely remarkable to see how much fuel they're able to store and move on a daily basis. And so getting something that can, at least limit the amount of fuel being dispersed from strong shaking, I think would be absolutely incredible in terms of reducing the risk of fires post-earthquake, which is a major concern, but then also, getting back to operational status post-shaking.
And I would say we were pleased, I don't know if that's the right word to use, when we received back the feasibility study and saw that some of these benefit cost ratios were rather considerably high, supporting what we had anecdotally been saying for years, that the mitigation efforts and the earthquake early warning were of great benefit, both for the notification of the general public as well as these automated actions. And I would say another thing that really pleased us was, or at least me, when we went out, we thought, okay, so now we have the feasibility study. We have momentum with the airports. Let's put into place this pilot. We actually got 2 other airports that didn't participate in the feasibility study apply for it. So that kind of shows, that the outreach and that the industry was hearing about it and thinking about it. So if you haven't read the report, some of it is a real easy read. And then some of it is, the numbers, square roots of this multiplied by the blah, blah, blah. If you're like me, you'll skim over those parts. But I think the message of the report is very easy to understand, that this is definitely a benefit to airports. And so we're really excited about the possibility of maybe more getting involved.
All right. Thank you, Deputy Director Najur. And if any of the board members are interested in individual briefings, besides when I've met with you all in the pre-meetings, please let us know and we'd be happy to oblige. All right. So we will continue the R&D section at 2:13. Okay, to start the second half of our EEW Advisory Board meeting, Brandon will be joined by 3 of our system operations partners for a panel discussion.
I think Phil's checking something real quick and then we'll get started. All good? All right. So thanks again, everyone, for joining. And panelists, thank you so much for joining us here. I got a few questions for you, just talking about the projects that we've been working on with EEW and some projects that you've been focused on in terms of earthquake response and safety. But before we begin, I want to kind of introduce you and allow you time to introduce yourselves and your labs and what you do. So first, we have on our left, Hamid Haddadi, sorry about that, from CGS, so California Geological Survey. Julian Marti from Berkeley Seismology Lab, and Alan Husker from California Institute of Technology. Hamid, if you want to start first, if you want to just give some background from yourself as well as what you do at CGS.
Sure. Thank you, Brandon, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hamid Haddadi. I'm a supervising engineering geologist with California Geological Survey. I manage the California Strong Motion Instrumentation Program, that within the state, we also know the program as Earthquake Engineering Program. So I speak very shortly about the mandates of the program. The main mandates of the program is to instrument, record the strong motion data from the representative structures and geological settings in California, and then interpret the data for the data users and provide data to the community and the strong motion data users. Just quickly about our network. We have a network of about 10,000 sensors from instruments installed on the ground surface, as well as in different types of structures like buildings, bridges, dams, and the other types of structures. And the data that we get goes through a project that we call the Data Utilization Project for interpreting data and providing to the public, as well as we provide data through the Center for Engineering Strong Motion Data. That is a joint effort of California Geological Survey and the US Geological Survey.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your invitation to participate in this panel today. My name is Julien Marty. I manage a team of about 30 researchers and engineers at the Berkeley Seismology Lab. Some of our main projects are the real-time monitoring of earthquakes in Northern California in collaboration with the USGS. Earthquake early warning, of course, we already talked about that. The MyShake application, I think we're going to talk more about that in this panel. The monitoring of seismic faults in Northern California. The use also of distributed acoustic sensing, so DAS, for a broad range of application. I think we're going to talk about that as well today. And we also operate a network of about 250 seismic and geodetic stations all across Northern California. And we also produce, archive and disseminate a lot of earthquakes products and data to the civil engineering and scientific community. Quickly about myself. Before that, I work for several national and international organizations, including more than 10 years for a United Nations organization in charge of nuclear test monitoring. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Hello, I'm Alan Husker. I work at Caltech, or California Institute of Technology. Very similar to what Julian just said, run the seismic network there. Caltech very much tries to incorporate the science along with the research, or science, excuse me, along with the technology. So we're always pushing the envelope for new things and trying to bring in new ideas along with these kind of projects with the sensor network, we're running the Southern California Seismic Network that's part of the Shake Alert and part of California Earthquake Early Warning. We have many different projects going on, and it's very similar to many of the things that Julian said, including DAS, and then we also provide the official magnitudes and locations for earthquakes in the Southern California region, work with many partners. I think Julian covered most everything I wanted to say because it's a very similar position. So I'll just leave it at that.
All right, well, thanks everyone. So that's our panelists. And so we're going to start kind of going project by project and talking a bit more about it. And then we're going to focus a bit more on what we've done in the past with R&D and kind of where we're looking for in the future. That's kind of the focus here. Getting started, we're going to start with Hamid. And we're going to be looking at the sensor data for engineering applications. And so application of EEW stations data and the real-time shaking map that shows the level of ground shaking in real time at each station and can help emergency managers learn where maximum shaking is felt. So for you, this application, again, uses that real-time data from the ground response stations, as well as could be very beneficial in these settings. How much time do you think it'll take to calculate the severity of shaking?
So the real-time shaking map that you mentioned, Brandon, is a part of an application that is called Quake Map. This application The background of the application is that we started with another application that was called CISN Display. It was developed at Caltech. And then we made a web portal of the CISN Display with some additional features, and now we call it Quake Map. The real-time shaking map is one of the features of the Quake Map. What it does is strong motion data from the real-time stations, including the early warning stations and any other real-time station, go to a server that the real-time shaking map basically is the interface of that server. What it does is that within 1 minute from basically in 1 minute time intervals, it finds the maximum of shaking at each station and it displays on a map. Also, it keeps the history of the shaking for 15 minutes and 1 hour for emergency responders. So what it does is mainly useful for very quickly after the earthquakes, when we receive the earthquake information from the seismic networks. So by using the real-time shaking map, the emergency responders have the opportunity to use the earthquake information from the authoritative networks, as well as look at the map and see where the maximum shaking is happening. So basically, the response time for this application is within 1 minute. But also, we are working on a new development that even in 1 minute time interval, we are putting some thresholds that when the peak ground acceleration exceeds certain value, it would not wait for the entire 1 minute. It shows on the display right away and instantly. So basically, that is what the real-time shaking map does.
That's great. And from an emergency management perspective, that's something that we would obviously want to see. Where is that strong shaking occurring? And so if we need to, throw resources in that area, we kind of have a targeted direction and we can see maybe where populations are at and so forth. So having a map like this would be something obviously we would be interested in. And you already mentioned it, looking for first responders. Do you think this could be something that could be used for both the public and emergency management?
The map at this time is a part of the Quake Map and is designed for the emergency responders. So basically, there is a login part of the Quake Map that the emergency responders need to log in to get access to the map. But also, we are doing a stress test for this application to see how many users at the same time they can access the map. And if the stress test is successfully done and everything works fine, it could also be provided to the public. But at this time, it's mainly for the emergency responders.
That's great. And I know something that we would definitely take advantage of going in the future and might already be doing so. Well, thank you, Hamid. We're going to move on to our next project. So appreciate it. Moving to Julian, looking at the shake table. So this topic is focusing on essentially at a meeting in January 2025, an SSE meeting, UC Berkeley Seismology Laboratory received approval for a 12-month project to utilize the shake table at UC San Diego to research the MyShake smartphone app and how recent results show these waveforms can be used to extract state of health information and can be used for building health monitoring. Can you tell us the importance of such a project and its implications for earthquake early warning and earthquake response?
Sure, thank you. So this project uses, in fact, MyShake smartphone accelerometer data for building health monitoring. So the idea is really to try to establish a baseline of natural frequencies for building all across California, and to monitor whether these frequencies, they shift or they change with time after a major event. And so we have managed to identify natural frequencies for more than 1,200 high buildings in California using MyShake data. So that's already a very impressive achievement. But in addition to that, we wanted to validate that concept And this is what Brandon just mentioned. We worked with the University of California, San Diego, because they build 10-level building structures on a shake table, and they replace some well-known earthquake sequences. And during that project that lasted 3 months, we installed cell phones, smartphones at different levels in that building. And we monitor, in fact, that yes, using that data, we could see shift in frequencies in this building structure, one earthquake sequence after another. So that's really confirmed that now that we have this database of natural frequencies of building in California, if there will be a major earthquake, we'll be able to monitor those frequencies again and potentially identify if there were changes in those frequencies that could indicate that there was a change in the dynamic properties of the building. So in terms of earthquake response, I think this is what we would do, provide that information to the engineering community, and that would allow to flag building. We know that when there is a major earthquake, for example, if we take the example of the Anchorage earthquakes in 2018, they had about 10 inspectors. They had to inspect thousands of buildings. So, and they can only go, of course, one building after another. And so the idea is that we will be able to flag the buildings that most likely had changed in their dynamic properties. And then those buildings, and maybe the inspector could prioritize the inspection of these buildings. So that's how, yeah, that's how we think this data could be used for after earthquake response.
And that's great, because I know, for example, from my own experience, one of my best friends, he's an engineer, structural engineer, so he got SAP certified. So during a post-earthquake, he can go and help evaluate buildings. But having something like this can help them in that pursuit of figuring out how to triage the buildings, right? Which ones can we see already before we've been out there, which we need to go to first. And so that's going to help a lot in terms of our response, figuring out who needs to be leaving the buildings immediately, and how do we get back to operational status post-shaking.
Yeah, and maybe I should add that CGS is actually really the reference institution monitoring building in California, and they have very high resolution instrumentation. They do, I mean, they do this work in much more details for the building they monitor. But I think that what MyShake can do is do this monitoring across many more buildings and extend to thousands of buildings in California. And so that's what we can bring to this project. And I think at CalOES, you're also training, I think you have this safety assessment protocol training where you train.
STAP that I mentioned.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Where you're training a responder also to assess the safety of the building after a major earthquake.
That's additional tools. And that's just something I want to bring up next is something like this that you have. I know it's having phones being able to detect this, but I kind of think of, having more data to kind of add to your algorithm or different sources. Is there anything, like you mentioned, the high resolution sensors, can you kind of combine those together to make even like I'm not the most scientific person, but better product in a way if that collaboration was there?
Yeah, I mean, you want to... No, I mean, sure, it can be either of us. Yeah, it's key. Of course, I think that's, I mean, first of all, I want to say that, as you mentioned, this was a research project funded by the Seismic Safety Commissions. I mean, CGS has been doing that for decades. So I think now maybe the next step will be to think how we can maybe, join this data together to make it available to the engineering community so they can make a decision on this entire data set. For us, I think what will be also interesting is, again, we now have information about frequencies for thousands of buildings, but we don't know what these buildings are. So I think a next step that would be interesting for us is to get more information about each of these specific buildings so we can make our algorithm even better, and potentially also look into these inspector reports, this I think ATC20 reports, to see if we can correlate the information there with those shifts in natural frequencies that we might observe.
Well, just add to what Julian mentioned.
Sorry, Hamid, just before you continue, I just want to make sure the board is aware you are free to jump in anytime if you have a question or a comment. Sorry.
Yeah, just I wanted to add that the MyShake application that Julian mentioned and what we do in California Geological Survey, actually these two complement each other. What does it mean? What we do in CGS, we cherry pick a specific type of structures and geological settings And we study the response of the structures that could be representative of a large group of structures. And then we use very high resolution instruments for the study and interpretation. And the results could be applied to many structures in that category. Also, the data from the CGS stations are used in design of structures. Like when we record waveform as a type of a structure, engineers use the waveforms for design of different structures in the same category. And in the long term, the data from the CGS stations are used for improving and modifying the seismic design code. For these purposes, the type of data that we use need to be very high resolution data and very accurate data. Parallel to this, what Julian mentioned is basically using data at thousands of buildings. And the purpose of that is not for using the data for designing a structure, but to say that particular structure, if that particular structure responded good or bad to an earthquake. So that is basically the difference. These two do not conflict each other, they complement each other.
I'm thinking of our board member sectors. Oh, we got a question from board member.
Yeah, just real quick. I just want to make sure I understood. The data that you use to measure the frequency response in the building over time, and if it's changing, it might indicate that there's some kind of structural defect in the building somewhere. Is that coming from individuals with phones? Like, and you're getting, I mean, where are you getting the data from for a building? Is it outfitted with accelerometers, or is it people's phones?
I mean, okay. So it's both. So you want to start with the instrumentation in the buildings?
Sure, I can take the instrumentation of buildings. Basically, the buildings that we instrument in CGS, we use the high resolution instruments from the seismic equipment manufacturers. But I think the part that Julian is talking about is cell phones that individuals use in the buildings.
Yes, exactly. So if the users agree, we can also collect from time to time accelerometer data from their cell phone, and then we get that data through the MyShake application.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And,
and to be clear, those are phones that have downloaded the MyShake app.
Yes. And that's what allows for such a broad coverage of buildings. Yeah.
As I'm thinking of, like, obviously with David Briggs, right, with utilities or with airports, hospitals, sky rises for businesses, whatever it might be, incorporating this can help with a response setting, right? You have strong shaking and you can see, are those buildings damaged? You can use the high resolution sensors to kind of figure out, the better infrastructure meat and bones of that building to help improve later designs and so forth.
Yeah, maybe giving one example of the high resolution data that we use. There is a bridge in Ferndale area that we are working with the Department of Transportation, Caltrans, on that bridge. And the plan is to put 2 seismic gates at each side of the bridge. When there is an earthquake and the level of shaking gets to a set threshold of acceleration, the instrument sends a signal to a Caltrans device, and that device already is using a logic to decide if the seismic gates should be closed or not. So that is one of the examples of using such seismic data for engineering applications.
I have a question for Julian. So theoretically, let's say there's a high rise downtown, maybe 15 floors, and there's MyShake app holders on every floor. We have an earthquake. Could the data potentially like literally show where in the building the damage may be. So for instance, if you get it from, 100 or so phones spread about all 15 floors, could you say, uh-oh, looks like the greatest resonance difference is on between floors 7 and 8, or, something like that?
That could be, but we will need to know the dimension and this building very well, and we will need to know also where the phones are in the building, which we know like plus or minus usually 2 levels. So right now the problem is, there is no problem, but the data we collected from all these buildings, usually we know nothing about those buildings. But as I said, that could be the next step, where then if we learn about that buildings, and then if we start looking, especially in the height of the phones in the building, that maybe we could derive a little bit more information about the structure of this building. But right now, it was just, as I said, a 1-year research project. So we mainly look at the natural frequency of the building, which is usually between 0.1 and 1 second. And that's the main parameter that we have been monitoring. But I think, yes, that could be really a next step in the project. And then we'll do something a little bit more in the direction of what Hamid described, where we really instrument the entire building.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I think we're going to continue onwards, but I think that's a great conversation. I'd like to see as we talk about, past projects and future projects, seems like a great chance for collaboration and excelling that project forward. But we're going to move over to distributed acoustic sensing. So this is more of a question for Alan Husker and Julian Marti. But Hamid, if you have anything to add, feel free to jump in. All right. So there have been significant improvements in the effectiveness of reporting earthquakes with the introduction of DAS cables. And so I guess before we begin, we should talk a little bit about the background of DAS a little bit. Do one of you want to kind of explain a little bit of what DAS is?
Sure, I'll take this. So it's basically turning fiber optic cables into seismic sensors. So in fiber optic cables, it's light pulses are sent down, so laser light pulses. The speed of light is constant in a cable. So if it stretches at all, then the time for that laser to go through that cable changes. The time it takes to go through that, because the distance has changed. And so you measure all these little wiggles all over the place, basically, and you get all the full waveform of the seismic waves as it passing across this cable. And so that can be over 100 miles, roughly, that you give these really long cables that are stretched all over the state. And so that's the basic concept of the technology. And what's exciting, not only onshore, like with Middle Mile Initiative, but offshore as well, where we don't have sensors because they're really expensive to put offshore.
For example, so one of the fiber optic cables, maybe the number isn't quite known, but how many sensors do you kind of get in one of those cables?
Yeah, so like 100-mile cable will give you over 10,000 sensors, the equivalent along that cable. So you get a sensor, you can change where you get them exactly because you tune the light basically. You tune different parameters, but 1 every 10 meters is a rough, 1 every 5 to 10 meters, depending upon how you have it set up.
And then how can this be advantageous to earthquake early warning or the Q system in general?
Yeah, so this is advantageous because it fills holes in the network, and it also densifies the network. And then especially, like I mentioned, offshore, for example, in Southern California, there are a lot of faults offshore that run up and down the coast. It's been estimated to get a magnitude 7 between LA and San Diego. There was a tsunami. I can't remember the year now, but I think there's definitely, well, a few different ones, but one in 1812 actually, in Santa Barbara. And so tsunami possibility as well, from earthquakes as well in the region. So it's a way to kind of fill that gap in our infrastructure and reduce errors. Actually one of the huge advantages when we have errors in location or magnitude, they pretty much always occur where the sensor network is not dense, and so that's offshore. And then there's some holes onshore as well, but it helps fill those holes and reduces errors.
Background. So majority of like our missed earthquakes, those are offshore earthquakes, right?
Yeah, and not only missed, but like literally like the sensor network detects it so quickly not all the data is traveled across all the sensors onshore. And so it first of all, the seismic wave takes time to travel onshore. So you're missing that warning time that you would have gotten if you were able to detect it while it was offshore. And then on top of it, you get other errors. So like the location can be wrong oftentimes, or the magnitude's wrong. And so you fix those errors if you get sensors closer to the source.
Yeah, sorry, just to, because really the main challenge when you have an earthquake onshore, because we have a dense network of seismic stations, so it's quite, I mean, I don't want to say easy, but we can triangularize basically the location of the event of this earthquake, which is on land. But in the case of an offshore earthquake, if this is the coast, we have the earthquake here, all the stations are on the same side, so they all point into the same direction. So it's very difficult to locate where this earthquake is. And so with that, as Alan explained, because now we have measurement point offshore, then we can measure the direction this earthquake is coming from at many different angles. And this is why we can locate it much more precisely.
So we have a few ground sensors, like on islands and so forth, Northwest California, but really not much in the actual in the water. So having these vast wells offshore are huge for improving EEW. So I know that both Caltech and UC Berkeley are working on with optic cable, vast cables. So the ones that you're working with, what faults are they running over right now?
So we have mainly two cables that we have permanent access to. The first one goes south of San Francisco, right along the San Andreas Fault for 50 kilometers. And we have, again, 10,000 measurement points. So now along that fault, which, to give you a sense, before that, we had maybe around 10 seismic stations around that section of the fault. And now we have 10,000 measurement points. So we can really map this fault very precisely when there is an earthquake. And the other cable we have is an offshore cable, which goes 52 kilometers out of Monterey Bay. And so that cable goes, in fact, around, across the San Gregorio Fault, which is a fault adjacent also to the San Andreas Fault, and which is known to have generated magnitude 7 earthquakes or more in the past, including a magnitude, I think, 6.4 that was recorded in 1926. So both cables, yeah, we are really looking at cables that goes either along or across the major seismic fault in Northern California.
Yeah, and we have a current cable that's running data that's recording that we've been using for over a year now to measure earthquakes. It's just south of Ridgecrest, and so we were given access because of the Ridgecrest earthquake, and so it's been running actually for quite a while. But it's only been feeding into the USGS, like the actual official locations of earthquakes for a little over a year. So that's running across the Garlock Fault, which runs kind of almost not quite perpendicular, but almost perpendicular to the San Andreas Fault. And then we've had access and run data on a number of other different cables. One of those is in Long Valley, and that was looking at the caldera there for what we call a volcano. And looked at the magma chambers. We also have one that's running through Southern California, through LA, the city of LA, that we ran for a short time. These are all the ones we ran for a short time. And then we have agreements for a couple of cables that will run to Catalina Island. And another one that we're working on in another part of LA Bay. But the ones that run over to Catalina Island go across the Newport Inglewood and the Palos Verdes faults.
Thank you. All right, that sounds better. Thanks, Phil. So looking ahead a little bit, do you aim to add more cables to be studying DAS?
Yes.
Yeah, and for us in Northern California, I think even at the scale of California, the area that produced the earthquake with the largest magnitude is really offshore Mendocino. So that's really the area where we'd like to secure access to an offshore cable, because we have already published papers demonstrating that we could get up to 20 seconds extra warning time I mean, for everybody living in the area, also in the Bay Area, if we would have access to an offshore cable. So yeah, that already with this cable in the Monterey Bay, we showed that we have this algorithm that process data in real time, and then we can get up to 6 seconds of extra warning time if we ingest that data into the earthquake early warning system. But of course, the Mendocino area is the area with the, as I say, the largest numbers of high magnitude earthquake in California.
And that was kind of a question I was going to bring up is, are there any critical infrastructure areas or spots like off the Cape Mendocino that would be the most advantageous to add DAS?
And Brandon, we have a question or a comment.
Yeah, quick question just to understand, are these cables that your teams are you're having laid specifically for this, or are they utilized for something else and you're just gaining access to these cables for data purposes?
So usually it's the second option. I mean, there are institutions that deploy their own cable. That could be one solution, of course, and that's usually technically the best solution because you can really lay the cable with the shape you would like, with the response you would like to monitor seismically a specific area. But that means, of course, a significant investment, especially if we talk offshore, to lay out that cable. So, so far we have been using existing cable. In the case of the cable, which is in the Monterey Bay, this is a cable owned by MBARI, the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute. We have secure long-term agreement with them. And the other cable, which is south of the St. Andreas Fault, for us, we got access thanks to PG&E. So we'd really like to thank them for that. And they had some unused fiber optic cable going along the St. Andreas Fault. So it's thanks to them that we can monitor this area.
Yeah, and just to add, you bring up a point that's kind of a challenge, just getting access to these cables. So a lot of what we're doing is working with different people to try to get access. The Middle of the Mile initiative seems really open, but they're very much in like installation phase. They're like, we'll get to you later, which is fine. But then offshore, it's incredibly challenging. So they're like, oh, we'll give you a cheap price for $100,000 a year. And so that's, that's not something we can afford. So it just depends. So where we have successes, we put the cable in, or we put the sensor in onto the cable. In those places where it's a bit more of a challenge, we haven't been able to, but it's we're slowly moving forward, I think.
So regarding other applications of DAS that you asked, just I wanted to mention about that. Engineers are interested in DAS because of two factors. One is that, as Alan mentioned, when you use a fiber optics cable, you can think of having as many sensors as you need to use. And the second factor is that engineers are very interested in measuring a strain. And that is something that DAS provides directly. I mean, engineers would like to know how the structures in general, the displacement in structures happen. And especially for high-rise buildings, as well as any extended linear structure, like a bridge, or a dam, or a railroad. DAS could have very useful engineering applications. So that is one of the items that I hope that in the future we can explore more and see how we can use DAS for engineering applications.
Brandon?
Yes.
I have a question for another use, and I apologize, I stepped out of the room. You may have already mentioned this. So our first presentation had to do with tsunami. And so can this same technology pick up tsunami waves?
Yes. So actually, my postdoc is publishing a paper right now that they used DAS offshore of Morro Bay to detect the Kamchatka earthquake, or we did. Yeah. So, yes.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions about DAS? All right, we're going to move along a little bit then to our next project, which is looking at MyShake. So this is being targeted to Julian. So MyShake has expanded to laptops through applications for Chromebooks and MacBooks, and is now publicly available. It is also accessible in browsers like Chrome and Edge. What sectors do you wish the application to expand into next?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So yes, MyShake started in 2019 with smartphones, and I think, as you mentioned, now we have close to, I mean, in the previous presentation, we have over 4.4 million downloads for this application, and that's really, and then we extended, yes, to Chromebooks and macOS computers. So that's really targeting the public. But then we also wanted to target large organizations. So this is why we came up also in partnership with you is this Chrome extension or Edge extensions, because what we learn is that in fact, IT team in large organization, they cannot deploy full apps so easily throughout a very large number of devices. I mean, it's much easier for IT teams to manage those browser extensions and to roll these browser extensions, roll the browsers of the digital devices that are using these organizations. And so this is why we developed a reduced version of the MyShake application as a browser extension. We tested it on campus first, and then, as I think you explained in the presentation before, we deployed it at Cal OES and then at CGS through thousands of devices at once, in fact, in a few minutes. So that's really a great mechanism to bring earthquake early warning into large organizations. But then what we have also observed is that, so as I think it was mentioned also in the previous presentation, to increase the number of users from the public, I mean users of earthquake early warning, those are mainly earthquakes driving the downloads. So every time there is a big earthquake, we have a high number of downloads. But for large organization, we don't need to wait for earthquakes. Like now, we just rolled out, I mean, as we said, the extension at Cal OES, at CGS. And so in the same way, when we contact this large organization, we realize that sometimes we find someone who's very motivated and is going to be excited about earthquake early warning. They're going to try to implement something in their organization, but then they will leave or they will move to another position and the next person will be less exciting and the project will drop, or whatever software has been installed will not be maintained, and that will not last. So as MyShake, what we would like to do now also is to provide a solution to this problem, which means that to be able to develop also a version of the MyShake application that could be installed in emergency centers, control towers, basically in key area of those organizations, and that we would provide the information which is needed by this organization to take either manual or automated actions. And as MyShake, we will maintain those systems, or at least the system that bring the alert into the organization in order for that to be maintained over time. So that's this project that we plan to start this year in collaboration with you, is to build this kind of backend system that will prioritize the sending of alerts to critical organizations so they can then take manual or automated actions afterwards. And in fact, we had 2 pilot projects that were very successful that we did on campus with regard to this new system. One of them was with the Cal Stadium. So they never thought much about earthquake early warning before, but we brought earthquake early warning into the control room of the stadium. And then that started forcing them to think, okay, now we have this alert, what are we going to do with it? What are we going to announce if we detect an earthquake? So that's that, because we provide a solution for free. They don't have to implement anything on their side or to maintain anything on their side. And the other thing is that we also have our Office of Emergency Management on campus. They manage an app which is called the UC Berkeley Safety App. And they also deliver message through text message and emails every time there is a safety concern on campus. And before, the person in charge of that had MyShake, and whenever there was an earthquake alert, then you would go manually in the system and enter, okay, there is an earthquake that is affecting the Berkeley campus, and that was pushed by email, text, and the app. Of course, that was not earthquake early warning anymore, and that's by the time the people were receiving the message. But they reached 80,000 users. So that's a big number of users. And now basically what we did, again, we modified the MyShake message we send so they could ingest that message automatically into their system. And now basically within a few seconds, this earthquake early warning message, they get delivered to 80,000 users throughout campus. So I think what we have realized through these 2 pilot projects is if we want to make progress with having more organizations, more whether they are private or public, taking this earthquake early warning information and doing something with it, we need to bring it into their organization for free with some kind of solution that they can ingest very easily. So then they can decide what kind of action they can take next. And this is really in that direction we'd like to go. Because as I say, for the public, the main driver is earthquakes. I mean, the main driver for downloads. But we think that for just with this small project that happened at the beginning of the year, we added more than 100,000 users to earthquake early warning, either through the extension or through this UC Berkeley safety app, all at once without having to wait for earthquakes.
Yeah, that's great. As you saw earlier when Phil was presenting, he showed after which earthquake it was, how many downloads we had, like 10,000 downloads after in 5 days. So instead of waiting for an earthquake like that, how can we get into an organization? Because there's something called app fatigue, right? Where, I don't want to have a whole nother app, but maybe this organization already has an app. So how can we integrate MyShake into the app you already have so we can hit that larger audience?
And I think so. I'm sorry, maybe I'm talking too much. The other learning experience for us was when we met with our colleagues from Taiwan, and I think you also met with them, because we realized that they also have an earthquake early warning system, and they have agreement with more than 4,000 organizations. And we wanted to understand how they managed to secure so many agreements. And one thing is that because they also deliver a solution, a free solution for basically this organization to already be able to receive that message, visualize that message, and then start thinking about what they want to do next with this information. And this is why we also wanted to go in the same direction.
So the alerting mechanism essentially becomes like a relay device that basically sends that message to a different organization.
Exactly. But also try to think about delivering more information. Okay, 2 points. The first one is when you push, let's say, 2 or 3 million alerts. I mean, not everybody is going to receive an alert exactly at the same time. So we would really prioritize delivering an alert to this specific organization, and they would be sent right away. So there would be an idea of prioritizing, and also probably of delivering additional information. When we deliver the alert on cell phone, we're asking people to drop cover, hold on, that's it. But then through this extended version of MyShake, we could tell them how many seconds they have before they might expect shaking, and basically additional information that can help them, again, making the right decision for their organization at the time.
And that brings us to my next question is, moving on from MyShake, right? You get the drop cover, hold on, but how do we customize that? How do we customize it to lock cover and hold on? How do we customize it to like an operational message if you're sending it to, I'm just saying surgeons, right? Telling them maybe something specific to their work zone, or to people like line workers out in the field. So, maybe we can't change the message on MyShake, but through an organizational app that the company uses, maybe it's easier to change that message to help provide that productive action alerting.
Yeah. Actually, I think we are thinking about having this option in the next version of MyShake. We are working currently, or we just started working on the new version of the MyShake application. That would be version 4. And in that version 4, we'd like to include new features that were requested either by your user base or sponsors or CalOES, where we think. So one of them will be, for example, having the possibility to have several home base, so you could receive an alert for several locations. Another one would be for the user to be able to select the message that fit that user. So like, for example, lock cover. Exactly. So I think, yes, we have a list of features, and our goal is to implement those features in the next version of the app that we hope could be released next year. But of course, that also requires not only change on the app, but also on the backend infrastructure that need to manage those changes. So that's why it's going to be some work before this new version is released.
Thank you. And so from there, I kind of move the question over to the board to see if, as we kind of talk about MyShake and the different projects we've been working here with R&D, if you see it benefiting your sector, or even a sector not specific to you, but you say, oh, I think it could help X, Y, and Z.
Just from my perspective, we work really closely with the local communities and we call them, our operational areas or essentially the counties. But I could see where you could similarly apply that, from moving my shake through your university system and getting it out that way to using it where it connects to their advisory notification system, not their alert and warning, like they send out alert and warnings that automatically go out to everybody, but to the sign up advisories and getting that information, that same information out. That I think that would, that works right along in that aspect. And I think that's a great, opportunity and a great use of that system.
And I know that some counties have their own app to send out notifications. They're not maybe early warning alerts, but their notifications, they're kind of alerts in their own way,
right?
Telling of fires or gas leaks or whatever it might be.
Exactly.
So connecting through these county applications can be another way to target a large audience.
Right.
Anybody else?
Just thinking of applications outside the box here, but have you ever thought about talking to people who are organizing very large sporting events like the Super Bowl or FIFA World Cup?
Absolutely. As you may recall, maybe just as you were coming on, we were sunsetting a project with the San Jose Quakes where we partnered to do messaging, but the whole goal of that, pun intended, was to also try to engage them in how we could potentially integrate earthquake early warning within their building, their facility. They're having them recognize their potential position as a location that people may go in the midst of an emergency. I don't know if there's any more to add to it, but it's definitely on our minds, and we all are aware of the Olympics. And so there's a focus there as well for the whole team.
I think one great thing to see is, as Julian mentioned, they already implemented MyShake into their stadium. So seeing the success there at the Berkeley Stadium, and then how can we apply that to other large venues or other stadiums throughout California?
So regarding the stadiums, a part of that relates to instrumenting stadiums. We are working on a couple of projects right now. One of them is at the Levi's Stadium that is going to host the FIFA World Cup games in June. And we are going to instrument the stadium in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, that in case there is any shaking, we can record and send information out.
And my team wrote a paper about measuring swift quakes, which were created by Taylor Swift when she had a concert in LA. Yeah.
Well, thank you. So we're going to come to an end here, but moving on to questions back to the panel. And this is to any of you who want to answer this. But as the focus of this panel was kind of look at projects of the past and how they progressed, and then looking forward, I want to focus first on the past here. So looking back at the last 6 to 7 years, what advancements have we made to queues? So California earthquake early warning. Have there been any prominent findings that have led to faster alerting or decrease in latency? And kind of open up to the panel to answer that.
So queues didn't really exist before 6 to 7 years ago. So the existence of it is, as a whole, is the biggest thing. But many of the challenges that were overcome was that the uncertainty that there wasn't certain at the beginning that it would be possible to have alerts that were issued in a very rapid time. We're moving massive amounts of data. You all are probably familiar with streaming services. There's a pause usually before your movie starts. That's because it's buffering. We can't buffer because if we wait and we're buffering, we lose time. And so we have, like, every second, we're processing data. And so I'm working with more than 500 stations out in the field, 100 samples per second. I can just 3 components on all these things, and I can just tell you it's like 1,000. I think it was 30,000 streams of data is essentially what we're getting from the field into our data center every second. And so we have to process that and everything. And so that's possible. That was like a big achievement, I'll say, making sure that can work. And then even companies like AWS, Amazon Web Services, aren't really even set up to handle this super well. because they buffer. That's kind of in their algorithms, and we can't buffer. We just need to get the data coming in. So we all essentially run small telecoms because that data is all coming in through different cables, fiber, radio, satellite, et cetera, like whatever it takes. And then once it comes, it goes to places like the MyShake app to get the data out actually to people. So that was just a huge achievement, I'll say, all by itself, was making that whole process happen.
And maybe to add what Alan just said, I think something that also evolved a lot, I mean, since the beginning of Qs is really the algorithms, because after each earthquake, there is really a process where we review how performant was the alert, how accurate was the location, how accurate was the magnitude. And so almost I don't want to say every time, but we really learn about specific scenarios that we could not anticipate before. So with time, we have managed to really fine tune the algorithm to make sure that we will not miss any events, to make sure that we'll be very accurate with the location, very accurate with the magnitude. Even the offshore piece that we just mentioned, we just pushed a new algorithm in February that allow us to really limit at least to do much better with offshore or out of network events. So I think something that's really evolved over the last 6-7 years is how much we have fine-tuned those algorithms that allows to trigger those earthquake early warning alerts.
So I add to what Alan and Julian mentioned on the engineering side. The early warning project has had a significant impact on how we look at data for engineering applications. 6-7 years ago, we didn't have any real-time data center for the strong motion data. We were doing a triggering system at that time, waiting for an earthquake to happen, shaking the stars, get to a level of shaking, and then start sending data out. And now we have more than 600 stations operating in real time. And also we have a data acquisition system that receives data from critical structures. And even though these are not within the few seconds that the early warning data is used, this is very quickly after that. And that is how we use data for engineering applications. A couple of examples is an earthquake notification system that we put together for Golden Gate Bridge, that within seconds now we send notification to the Golden Gate Bridge district when the level of shaking at the 2 towers of the bridge exceed a certain level in the relative displacement of the basement of the bridge and the top of the bridge. At the same project, we are working with the Department of Healthcare Access and Information, HCI, for a selected number of hospitals to receive data from the real-time stations, including the early warning stations, developing a very quick earthquake notification, send out to HCI for them to decide if any of the hospitals need to be inspected or they need to take action. All of this happened because of the early warning project.
Thank you. Yeah, great to see. I mean, thinking of big earthquakes, right? The 2019 Ridgecrest earthquake, we didn't even have EEW, and that wasn't that many years ago, ish. So seeing how much we've progressed in just a few amount of years is impressive, at least I think so. Looking forward 6-7 years now, I want to see what do you envision for Qs? And you can give me both a realistic answer, what you think, oh, okay, this will probably happen, and what's your best case, optimistic, gave me that funding, I'm doing X, Y, and Z.
So on the very immediate term, we're thinking about, and this is still future because it's in progress, the aftershock sequences. So everything up till now, we always think of the big one, big earthquake happens, we need an alert. But aftershock sequence can last, and usually if it's a big earthquake, we'll have an aftershock sequence that can last for weeks, months, etc. And so what happens in that sequence? And so we're looking at the LA fires as an example because they use the same cell phone alerts, not MyShake, but a different one. by the federal government to send out alerts during that sequence, and the fires lasted for a couple weeks. And what we found is that people switched from, so this is a paper that we've written and submitted, but with social scientists, but we found that people switch from, look at the immediate alerts from the moment, and the hazard as it progresses turns into a bigger thing. So there's the immediate, fire alerts that are coming out, but they're looking at a bigger picture, and they want kind of the bigger picture. And so people switch to the Watch Duty app, which many of you might have heard about. Similar, we think that the same thing will happen for a big earthquake. First, they're going to look at these individual alerts that we're getting on MyShake and whatnot. At a certain point, they're going to put the whole hazard together in their head as one thing. This is a group of events that's happening over time, and you just got to live with it because, I need to take my kids to daycare, or I don't know, whatever, go to the bank, things are happening, and earthquakes are going to happen while you're doing that. You need to drive someplace and still do things. And so they're going to switch mentality of kind of like how it works from the immediate danger to like a continued hazard. There is not an app that does that right now, unless we rely on Watch Duty. And so I think that is a future way that we need to think about moving the community, just as a suggestion. And I think you all can help with that more than probably I can. But so that's some of the research that we are looking at with how people react in these, and really thinking about the continued aftershock sequence, and also then how people react to, getting alerts. You can get 100 alerts in a day. Potentially, if it's a really big earthquake, somebody is getting 100 alerts on their phone because of all the aftershocks. Is that fatigue, or are they going to be like, oh, this is really helpful because I'm freaking out? What's going to happen there? And it's really hard to kind of test some of these situations. So we're thinking about how to test those as well. So that's on the human side of things. And then further out on these networks, like I said, improving accuracy and whatnot. We also see multimodal. I already mentioned the fires, but different things these networks can do. So the data is not exclusively only useful for earthquake early warning. We can do different things like look at how the basin, the LA basin, for example, focuses earthquakes. So just like a contact lens, when I was putting my contacts in this morning, you can see how they're concave structure, and it focuses the light, so it goes into my eye so I can see. The same thing happens with a basin. It focuses the seismic wave energy as it goes up, and makes it so places like Los Angeles are much more have much more shaking than they would outside of Los Angeles because of that basin focusing. And so when you have DAS and really dense networks, the CSN network, for example, we can see how that focusing is working. As you get bright areas, to think of it, like where it's really focused, and you can see like heavy shaking. Like after the Whittier earthquake, there was a particular spot in Whittier that had just extreme shaking compared to places around it. So you'll be able to pick that a lot more with these denser networks that we're getting with DAS and CSN and all these different efforts that we're doing. I had one more thing, but I can't remember it now. But those are the things. Yeah, you had a question.
Yeah, for Alan, the last thing that you were talking about, very interesting, because when we had the Ileton earthquake up here, the system reacted very differently than on other earthquakes. And at that time, and now as I hear you talking, my thought is, if we have enough earthquakes across California, couldn't we potentially map them so that we see those areas where we know the shaking is going to be stronger, and then either adjust our algorithms or our public education in those areas accordingly?
So people are definitely working on that. It's really complicated because California is all turned up. So it's a big mess, which is fun for us to study as seismologists, but it makes it very complicated. But yeah, people are definitely working on that. To further complicate it, I'll just throw out there, every earthquake itself, you can think of it like a mini sun. Like we get all the frequencies of light that come to us. And so we can see red, purple, orange, green, et cetera, like all these different colors. Buildings will see different colors essentially because they will vibrate depending upon how they're excited. So different frequencies will excite them, and the bigger the earthquake, the bigger buildings tend to get excited. And so you have this other complication of the size of the earthquake itself will change the parameters of what happens. But I'm making this way more complicated than I should. So The final thing I was going to say is some other exciting things, just really outside the box that we can do with these technologies, measure groundwater. And so seismic waves pass more slowly through water than they do through just completely dry land. And so that's one of the things that looking at basins and aquifers is one of the things that is coming out with the technology now. Oh, and finally, data. This is a massive amounts of data. DAS is like way more data than we're used to in the past. And so I already talked about the challenge of like sending all this data, small packets, quickly so we can read it and analyze it. And saving it is also a huge deal. So it'll be interesting to see how technology grows over the next 6 to 7 years. And how we're going to be able to handle this data. There's all these giant data centers out there already for all the AI applications, and we're doing AI as well. And so it's like, how do we, maintain these data centers? And we have our data centers, but it's a challenge because we don't have the money that other, I don't know, Google or AWS or any of these other places has. And so how do we maintain this massive amounts of data and analyze it all at the same time? So there's a whole computer science aspect to the whole thing as well that we're working with as well.
I mean, I think Alan already covered it all. So, but yes, the improvement really over the next years, we already know some improvements we'd like to make to the earthquake early warning algorithm, aquifer monitoring, Alan mentioned that. DAS, especially for offshore location, we really believe in that. And then, as I said, MyShake, I mean, we really want, I mean, we have these earthquake early warning alerts now. They are accurate. We really want to increase the number of end users. We want more automated actions because it's good we produce this alert, but they need to be used. So I think what I would really like to see over the next 10 years is this alert to be much more used by the public, but also by the organizations. And maybe one point slightly on the side I'd like to mention is that, as Alan mentioned, we have all this great data now. We can do a lot of things in addition to earthquake early warning. But for earthquake early warning, we'll need to, in average, I think, so we have about 1,100 stations in California, and we will need to basically upgrade this equipment about every 10 years. So I think a big challenge is going to be to make sure that this network is maintained over time and that we are ready for the big ones. Because if we let it deteriorate, then the data will be the big one, then our network will not perform as good as it performs right now, because we have a brand new network, it's performing extremely well, but we need to make sure that we can maintain that over time. So again, we are ready for the big one, whether it happens in Southern California or in Northern California.
Well, adding to what Julian mentioned, we have 1,150 stations contributing to early warning now, but still we have cases that there would be false alarm or there would be some earthquake with uncertain location or size. So I think maybe this is one item for the CISN team to get together and see what solution we have. Of course, DAS is one of the solutions for the areas that we can use DAS, but what else we can do to make sure that we have the coverage that we need for the early warning notifications. That's one thing. With all the information that we get from early warning, I see a big potential to provide service for emergency responders. And on the top of all, Cal OES. I think there is a big potential for improving what we started and add to that and provide tools for emergency responders. And also, there are very critical structures in California. The early warning records and information can be used for providing very quick information to the stakeholders, to collaborators, to agencies in California, that they need to get the information right away after earthquake. We have many very important toll bridges in California that we need to cover. We have dams, tunnels, and etc. that the information from early warning, also hospitals, that the information from early warning can be processed and provided very quickly within seconds to everybody for responding to earthquakes.
Well, thank the three of you for that. I think that's great. And you have some amazing conversations so far on this panel. So again, thank you for taking the time to be with us. I want to open up to our board members to see if you have any questions, comments about what we've talked about in the panel.
I just want to say it's impressive where we came from and where we are now. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the future. Just going back to the reporting that was done at the beginning, that earthquake near Santa Cruz, 91% of the people knew that an earthquake was going to happen before the S wave hit. That's huge. I mean, if you think about it, not a decade ago, no one would have known. It just would have happened. So the progress we're making is incredible, and I look forward to seeing these ideas being put in place and more progress being made. So thanks.
Just overall, if you had some thoughts about the accuracy or false positives moving forward. I mean, I know it's a whole series of tech, the physical device that senses the ground motion, and then a network, and then software, and then another broadcast, and then an end user device. And so it's a bunch of things working in serial, but just overall, I mean, do you see, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, is there some sort of quantum improvement in accuracy you see? Does that make sense?
Yes, totally. But already, I would like to say that since 2019, actually, we had only one really true false alert out of I think the right number, is 186 alerts that we have issued for the entire west coast of the US, and most of them being in California. So I think the system is really already extremely reliable. But what happens sometimes is that, as we explained, in the case of offshore events, we're going to slightly overestimate the magnitude. So we're going to slightly over alert, or sometimes we're going to under alert. So we are more into the fine tuning in the system. But already, I think I'd like to insist on the fact, and it's quite impressive actually, that we delivered 186 alerts and only had one main false alert since 2019, and so I think the system is already at a very high level of performance.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, we talk about offshore Nevada as another place where there's just a sparse network, and so we get data from Nevada, but if there's just like one station that's off, then it can make a false alert because of or take a real earthquake and turn it into something much bigger magnitude than what it actually is. And so the sparse networks is kind of what we need to cover. So in that regard, people are working in Nevada very hard to try to bring them into Shake Alert officially. And if the state joins officially, then they'll get money for sensors. So they'll fill in the holes there. And so that would, these are the areas where we're really working on, is the offshore Nevada. And actually, I'm trying to work with our partners in Mexico quite a bit too, to densify there, because that's another source of where we get errors. So.
Okay, any additional questions from the board? Checking public, no public comments. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you to the panelists. Quick question and check everyone's temperature. We have a 5-minute break that we can take now, or do you all want to power through? Keep it moving. All right, so with that, to continue our EEW Advisory Board meeting, we'll have our California Council on Science and Technology Fellow, Kara He, provide a system operations update. Thanks again to the panel.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Derek. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kara. I'm the CCST Fellow supporting earthquake early warning until October. And today I'll be sharing system operations updates. Okay, so Cal OES Earthquake Early Warning Program continues to partner with the California Integrated Seismic Network, CISN, to reach our goal of 1,115 seismic stations. As required by California Government Code 8587.11, CISN is responsible for generating EEW alerts and managing system operations, which include the ongoing maintenance and performance of the California Earthquake Early Warning System, CEWS, powered by Shake Alert. We are currently in the final stages of the network build-out with over 96% complete and only 50 stations remaining. The increased station density is crucial for reducing alert latency and ensuring comprehensive statewide coverage. The number of stations has increased to 1,065, which reflects an increase of 19 stations that have come online and are contributing to earthquake early warning since the board last met in June 2025. Out of the 1,115 stations, 702 is the number of CEWS funded/planned stations. Cal OES and our partners have completed 700 out of the 702 planned CEWS funded EEW stations, with the final 2 stations currently in progress with the USGS and the Berkeley Seismological Laboratory. Cal OES Public Safety Communications continues to work to connect EEW stations into the state microwave network and secure tower/vault leases. There are 173 out of 317 EEW stations online and connected to the state microwave system, with 144 remaining. And that is the system operations updates.
Thank you, Kara. Chief Deputy Director, any questions or comments?
Thank you, Karen. No comment.
And I'll turn to the board to see if there are any questions. And online. All right. Thank you, Kara. We will now have Julie Leo, our Emergency Services Coordinator supporting education outreach and research and development, provide an update on the financial overview of the EEW program.
Thank you, Derek. Good afternoon, board members and guests at Cal OES. Before we discuss the 2025-2026 spending plan and some of our projects, I will discuss the 2025 and the 2026 business plans. The 2025 business plan was recently approved by the governor's office and is now visible to the public through our website. The 2026 business plan is currently going through the executive review process. The earthquake early warnings ongoing funding of $17.1 million from the general fund is approved. We continue to prioritize funding for system operations and the development of the California Earthquake Early Warning System, which has proven to be a vital safety tool for the state. We have allocated dedicated funds to ensure the optimal system performance and to deliver essential EEW and earthquake preparedness messaging to the public, including hard-to-reach and underserved communities. These efforts are supported by ongoing rapid response and our outreach Listos California grants. Through our research and development, we continue to support the integration of EEW into other sectors by advancing projects such as expanding MyShake capabilities, the airport implementation grant, and future projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie. Chief Deputy Director, any comments?
Thank you, Julie. No comments.
And for the board? And none online. Okay, as we transition to closing remarks, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank our board members for your continued support, whether it's supporting the MyShake extension rollout, support with our projects, or paving the way for seismic station locations. It's truly appreciated. And additionally, it's a bittersweet farewell to our System Operations Manager, Philip J. Labra, as this will be his last EEW meeting as a member of the EEW team due to his recent acceptance of the Program Manager 2 role as my counterpart over the Cal OES Earthquake Tsunami Volcano Program within the Seismic Hazards Branch. Phil, thank you for your contributions to this program over the past few years, and we look forward to collaborating with you on further endeavors within our branch. And with that, board members, do you have any final questions or comments? I'll turn to Chief Deputy Director Bastek.
All right, I just want to say thank you to our panelists today for joining us and sharing with us your insights, your enthusiasm, and your collaboration on EEW. Appreciate that. Appreciate our advisory board members for coming out, and thank you for your continued engagement, for your assistance in achieving our many successes in EEW. We hope you all learned something today. I know I did. It's been a pleasure to be involved with the advisory board today, and I look forward to future dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. And checking to see if we have any comments. Deputy Director Najur, any closing comments? All right. With that, we can entertain a motion to adjourn. Would anyone like to motion? And a second? All right. All those in favor say aye. All right. The ayes have it, and we are adjourned. Thank you.